people listening to us if you don't know, Archethics is a network funded by the URBACT program and has the aim to focus on the dissonant heritage, which is the complex, controversial, uncomfortable heritage we have belonging to totalitarian regimes, contention of borders, etc. And we wanted to announce this heritage as a non-divisive element for urban communities, but as a starting point for shaping new democratic identities and values. And the way we want to do that is through the involvement of our local stakeholders and local communities, and to use the URBACT method that encourages us to promote the integrated urban approach. Our final goal is to develop several integrated action plans. There will be 8, unfortunately, action plans because one partner left, the city of Leros. But we can see in this map that together with the lead partner, city Cesena, that Elisabetta Bovero, the country coordinator, introduced you, we have also the city of Permet, as you already know, the city of Kasalak in Bulgaria, the cities of Gdansk and Krakow in Poland, the city of Leipzig in Germany, the city of Vetera in Spain, and the city of Villanova and Cervera in Portugal. And we also have different and diverse dissonant heritage. We have dissonant heritage belongs to a really old era because we have the castle in Villanova and Cervera built in the 13th century as a border infrastructure to protect the border between Portugal and Spain. We have some dissonant architecture belong to the fascist period in Italy, and we have also the heritage of Leros belong to the same era, with that in Cesena with some buildings for educational purpose, for work and after work, and also some war infrastructures. In Leros we had a small town built by the fascist regimes, but as I told you, unfortunately, Leros, the city of Leros, left the network. Then we go to Vetera with the architecture belonged to the Spanish Civil War. They had some air raid shelters and the defensive line trenches, really interesting in the surrounding of Vetera. We are in Albania, and Permet as a really iconic building, a complex building that we will visit tomorrow, and also some remains from the Second World War. Then we have Gdansk and also Krakow with 2 very big districts built during the social realism period. And in Gdansk we have also a cultural center in Novi Port. So different types of architecture. Trenches, air raid shelters, but also districts. We have also Leipzig in Germany with the Stasi headquarters in the city center of the city, and Kasalak with the iconic monument for the propaganda of the Bulgarian government. Yes, so really complex heritage, really diverse, really also in different areas, big cities, smaller cities, etc. And the way we want to focus on this heritage is to use the multi-perspective approach, taking inspiration from, you already know, Salvatore Settis, that is an Italian archaeologist and art historian that conclude his book called Architecture and Democracy, tracing a strong link between architecture, citizenship, and ethics. Indeed, he said, the urban landscape contributes to the full exercise of civil rights, the right to the city, the right to the nature, and the right to the culture. So, taking the inspiration from Salvatore Settis, Archethics decided to focus on this heritage by 4 project dimensions. The dimension of people, architecture, history, and ethics. The 4 dimensions that will help us to try to design and build this multi-perspective approach that will help to analyze the past, to go to the present, to collect all the imaginations, all the opinions, and then they go to the present and the future for visualizing the future scenarios of our cities through this particular architecture. And finally, we are really happy to have today the opportunity to focus on two of these dimensions, the dimension of people and the dimension of architecture. We already focused on ethics and history in GAST in the first masterclass. And if you want, in the Facebook page, you can find the previous video about the first masterclass. But today, we focus, first of all, in the dimension of architecture. Because this heritage, the totalitarian regimes across Europe left us some architecture and some buildings that represent this period, that represents our past, our history. Indeed, architecture represents the material heritage, the objects, the monuments, the buildings built in the past as a propaganda tool for citizenship regimes to build consensus, to control people, or as a military protection of conflictual borders. These material objects also represent an historical period with really particular architectural styles and past functionalities. And we have some questions to investigate this dimension. Is it right to keep a building that symbolizes a difficult or even a dramatic past, or it is better to replace it? And again, how adaptive use, green solutions, circular approach, digital dimension could be used to enhance and regenerate dissonant heritage? So, some open questions. And the other dimension we want to focus on is the dimension of people, and in this case we are the people in charge to focus on dissonant heritage. And the dimension of people is really to include in the debate about dissonant heritage all the actors, locals, tourists, young generation, older people, experts, but also common people, girls, boys, women and men, all the people, also the most vulnerable people that generally have not the opportunity to be included in the debate. And we want to foster a critical interpretation of our dissonant heritage in order to build a continuous negotiation between people involved in the process, in order to prepare a good environment for sharing and learning the past and to co-design inclusive actions for the present and the future. Other open questions for this dimension are how we can develop a multi-perspective approach on dissonant heritage, also using the participatory planning approach, how to combine aesthetic functionality and also accessibility, and how can we make dissonant heritage become an attractive catalyst to reach new audience. So, several open questions, and fortunately we have some guests with us today that will help to answer to this question, or maybe to open other questions that we haven't saw before. And these special, let's say guests, but they are friends more than guests, are Nils Scheffler, urban expert and also URBACT adult expert, here with us from Berlin. And he will share a lesson about dissonant heritage recommendation to gain support. Nils also wrote the orientation paper prepared for the urban agenda for EU about dissonant heritage, and he will share with us some of the lessons learned through this work. Then we are really happy, and I really want to thank you, Doriana Musaj from, sorry, I wrong also in this presentation, from Polis University, based in Tirana, which is another university, not the University of Tirana, I finally discovered this day. Doriana is an architect and an urban planner and an expert of dissonant heritage in Albania. So she will share some histories of the architecture, especially the dissonant architectures here in Albania. And last but not least, another guest, but is our friend and our partner from the Municipality of Leipzig, Stephan Seiler, who is an architect but is working at the Municipality of Leipzig, and he will share with us the lesson learned from the case study of Leipzig, which promoted a participatory approach for an architecture. Before, so the study, yeah. So okay, so I will stop here, and then we give the floor to Nils first. Welcome, Nils, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, welcome. My name is Nils Scheffler. I'm from Tirana, and also thank you very much for inviting me to this masterclass, on which, as Ileana already said, I will try to present you some recommendations how you can gain support for your Dissonant Heritage sites, because often they are contested and you not always receive the support you might need. So the information I provide to you is based on a project which was about integrated approaches to Dissonant Heritage in Europe. This took place in 2021 and 2022 and was part of the urban agenda. And Kazanlak was part of this project, was one of the many municipalities we interviewed which have Dissonant Heritage sites, and that's also why I took this picture here. So what I will try to present today, first of all, present you briefly an overview about like types and characteristics, and the slides also you can have afterwards. So we will upload it, so we don't need to take pictures, you will get it straight. So I will give you an overview about like characteristics and types of Dissonant Heritage which we have encountered in Europe, and it's quite diverse. And also I will very briefly tell what is important we found out, and the importance of Dissonant Heritage sites for Europe, for our cities, for society, but also the challenges they encounter. And then this will be the focus of today, to give some recommendations to gain support. These are like the four main topics I can talk about. Today I will concentrate on developing shared perspectives and linking with other sectors, so that's more or less half an hour. Talking about all the other stuff will take a little bit longer. And I've heard you have already received some information on the other topics, so you will in the next meetings. So yeah, what are the characteristics of Dissonant Heritage? And you should be aware of these characteristics. You should check what are the characteristics which you have in your site as well, maybe which are different, because depending on the characteristics which you have locally, also you will deal differently with the Dissonant Heritage. So really, it depends on the local situation and what you might should do when you start working on your Dissonant Heritage. So, one important characteristic of Dissonant Heritage is that it invokes unpleasant, controversial memories and associations. Can be by the whole society, but also can be just by particular groups in your city or in society. And also characteristics of Dissonant Heritage is that it is sometimes perceived as politically or ethically tainted. And in this way, Dissonant Heritages are often historically significant sites which remember occurrences in the past, which are often related to regimes and also dictatorships in Europe, but also there can be legacies of war and persecution. So there are different backgrounds which you strongly have. And also quite interestingly, often these Dissonant Heritage sites are multi-layered. Multi-layered means that they can have different meanings, that they have different values, and because of different occurrences and events which have taken place in the past. So it's just the one event which marked the site, it can be a different one. And through these different events also provokes different perceptions, different perspectives, and these can be conflicting also to each other. So this is why you can have different perspectives on your site, and they all might be true, but they can be contradictory. So this is also part of Dissonant Heritage, or can be part. And also what we found out was quite interesting. We have Dissonant Heritage sites which not only have these negative events, also positive events have taken place there. So we have this, what do we show? The positive, the negative, do we show both? And then also you get conflicts and you have to deal with that, what do we show? So Disinherited sites in this way are not only places of atrocities, where atrocities have occurred, but also they can be places of symbolic meanings, and this also makes a difference how we deal with that, with these sites. So, from this understanding, disinherited sites can also be differentiated into places which are dominated by atrocities, like concentration camps, but it can also be sites which are more representative of a symbol of the oppressive system, but no atrocities have taken place there. So that makes already a strong difference. And for example, Kazanlak, which you've seen in the beginning, this is a symbolic meaning, but nothing really bad has happened at the site. And also, a distinction can be made if it's a site where positive and negative events have taken place there. And for example, in Poland, I have visited the Imperial Castle in Poznan. This is a typical site where also lots of positive things have happened there, but of course also negatives in the past. And another thing which is quite important is to see is what is the intensity of contestation and the different degrees of recognition by the society and political parties. So is it accepted what this disinherited stands for, or is it not? And also you can make a difference if the dissonance has been forgotten, so you're not really allowed to talk about it. You have, for example, a couple of concentration camps in Croatia where you don't talk about it. It's really under the carpet. Or if it's maybe even political suppressed, or just talk about in a very one-sided manner. For example, the Valley of the Fallen in Spain, it's often just from a personal perspective you talk about, but not about the whole history which is taking place there. So in practice, these characteristics, these types always overlay each other. And by this also each type has a quite special situation, and you should be aware about these framework conditions when you think about, okay, how can I treat this site and how can I further develop it? So, what are the importance of disinherited for Europe, for your cities, for society? To our mind, disinherited sites are very well suited places to convey in a very tangible and also in a very authentic way what has happened in our history, in our past at this site. And it's particularly important as so older it gets, so longer the occurrences are like in the past, the eyewitnesses you can tell about, they die out. But these places hopefully stay, and you still can go there and really see. It's not just reading in a book, you really can go there and experience at these sites what's happened there. That's why I think it's an important part. And this way, disinherited sites provide important physical structures to remember the complex but also controversial past in your city, in your country, even in Europe, because many happenings in these places also have quite a European importance. So in this way, the preservation of these heritage sites is just a means to this end. So the preservation should help to be better remember, to better communicate and what the place stands for, what has happened there in the past, and tell the history or the histories which the place might have. And it's important there can be really particular places to gather, to communicate about the occurrences and also to commemorate, but in particular to discuss dissonance. And this is an important part in our democracy. I have the feeling we forgot more and more to discuss different perspectives, different meanings, and these places you can become a central part where really people come together with different perspectives and they learn to talk about with each other and not against each other. So it can be also a very important part to strengthen democracy, to test democracy procedures at these places, because there will always have topics which are contradictory. So, the main task of disinherited sites is to be a place of public discourse, of public discussion, of education, and also of remembrance what has happened there. And for this, we have to safeguard these places to support these functions, potential functions of disinherited sites. But despite this potential importance and function distant sites can have, in many parts in Europe, and these sites do not receive the civic, the political support which they might need. And that's why the reason they often are very neglected, and sometimes even they're threatened by demolition and decay. And so what is really needed to gain, first of all, support to use and develop these sites. Without the support, you won't get the resources, and you need resources in particular for preserving these sites. So you need broad support for the usage of this Dissonant Heritage. And that's why I try to present you some recommendations which we found out through this project, how you can try to gain support for your Dissonant Heritage. And these are 4 key areas. One is raising awareness about the site. Another one is develop a shared perspective or perspectives for the site. Another one, very important, building up diverse partnerships and linking your Dissonant Heritage site to other sectors. And today I will concentrate on these 2 parts, and yeah, maybe another patient or more, or we'll see. So, developing shared perspective to be able and to raise and gain support. It's important that you, and together with other stakeholders, and not just you alone, with other stakeholders, it might be your ULG, for example, you can do this, that you develop an idea, a vision about the added value and the benefits of this Dissonant Heritage for your city, maybe even for the country, for the society, for the people. So really in the beginning, think about what are the benefits and added values which you can bring to the society and to your city, and so what could it become in the future, in the near future. So in this way, it's important to develop like a clear guiding idea and a vision which is supported by a broad number, let's say, of people, by different groups, and what the site stands for. So what this site presents, and how it should be further developed, or should it be developed if it's not developed by now, and also how it should be used. Then can we all have very different use, it can be possible. And also what should or could be communicated, remembered and discussed at the place. As I said, there can be different perspectives, and which perspective can and will be presented at that site. So what are the stories and narratives to be told and about occurrences at this place? So the guiding vision should, in this way, which you can develop, for example, with your ULG, should raise awareness about the site, so what really has taken place there, but also at the same time attract suitable cooperation partners which will support you in the future in the development of this site, and also encourage like a wider circle of stakeholders to think about projects, what can be done there, which fits to this guiding idea and this guiding vision. And the guiding vision in this way is also important as it shows why it would be useful to put resources to this site. So not you, but also other actors who can be involved, which can come from other sectors, which they always maybe raise some resources, which you can use then for the development of the site. So in this way, this guiding vision should be an activating one, a motivating one. And in this way, and here. So when you develop such a guiding vision, which you should take into account, is first of all, be aware of the different perspectives and positions which the heritage site can have, and invite you to take part in the reflection about the site for what should it stand for in the future. So it's not just that you pick the perspective which you like. There may be also a perspective which you do not like so much, but they are part of that side of the dissonance. So invite them to the meetings where you discuss it. This is very important. But also check if there are facts which that you can divide the narratives, the perspectives in reliable ones and unreliable ones. Because sometimes there are also perspectives on it where you have no facts about, and they're mostly not in that way as it's told. Of these, of course, you can exclude, but then you can tell also why you exclude them. And when you deal with Dissonant Heritage and you develop this guiding idea, it's not about that you solve the dissonance. The dissonance is part of the characteristics of these sites, so they can be in this way there, but it's really about that you consciously and actively deal with these different perspectives and openly. And in this way, also when there are positive associations, and they're part of the Dissonant Heritage, deal with the positive associations as well. And sometimes maybe it's even easier to start on the positive ones, and by this you can open the people also to think more about negative ones. So sometimes as entry points, these positives can be quite helpful. And when you discuss the very conflicting parts, it's very important that this does not lead to the accusations of other people, in particular when they're still living. Because when you directly tackle them, like you did this bad in the past, then you get a strong opposition, and this does not help you. So always draw lessons which you learn for today or for the future of what has happened. So it's not about blaming someone, it's always about learning dealing with your Dissonant Heritage. So always with the look to the future. What do we learn from the past to the future? And this is how you deal with the conflicting situation, not blaming other people or groups what they have done in the past. So what can you do to develop a shared perspective? And there are 2 key points. The one is knowledge building, and the other one is involvement of stakeholders in a multi-voice discussion. And I think there already you also received some ideas what you can do with the ULG. So in order to create a basis for a joint discussion and the handling of the Dissonant Heritage site, it's important to generate reliable knowledge and facts about the site and the dissonance. So what has really taken place there and what not. So the discussions in the beginning are very much emotional. Everybody has an idea and his perspectives. And through the facts you can try a bit to turn this more emotional discussion into a more fact-based discussion. Emotion will always stay through the whole time. You cannot deny it, it's also part of all this. But you can try to turn it into a more fact-based discussion, which is really important, particularly when you get these different perspectives to each other. So one important part, what you should try is to steer research to the need of knowledge and the discussions which you have for your Dissonant Heritage sites. So you have to be aware of the perspectives, of the controversies, and by this try to get in touch with researchers and say, okay, this would be great if you would do research in this way. We need knowledge, we need facts about it. And in the sites that we visited, there were researchers doing their research, but they just did it on their own because it was their interest. So try to figure out who might be interested in these sites and try to tell them, this is knowledge what we need, can you maybe put this also in the research? Also we found out it's very important, I mean often this is done by local researchers, if you can involve like national or international research artists. And the reason is that it has shown that then the results are often more accepted when there's like national, international known researchers taking part in that. So try to find out how you can also get in touch with that, such more, let's say, known researchers. And also try to form, if possible, an independent scientific advisory board that coordinates the research and also reviews the results. And so by this also it can contribute to a wider recognition of the results of the research. And most importantly, make the research results available to the public. So really think about how can we prepare these results to the public that they can understand what has happened there and drive this knowledge into the discussion about the site, about memories and so on you would like to present there. And yeah, in view of often controversial discourse which you have on the different perspectives dealing with the Dissonant Heritage sites, it's also then too important to initiate the stakeholder involvement, which provide the space to discuss all these different perspectives on the Dissonant Heritage. And here important to really bring it together. It's not talking about each other, it's talking about with each other. And this is the most complex and difficult part, because it's emotionally. So in this way, you really have to take your time for it. So it's not what you just do. You can be a little bit in the bad position that URBACT says, in a year you have to have done your local action plan ready. Maybe discussion needs more time than that. And I'm pretty sure if it's very contested, it needs more time. Take your time. You will do what you have to do in URBACT. I mean, I've had been lead expert as well, and I know what is happening. You will deliver something, but really finally you do it to really support the development of the Dissonant Heritage site. So the joint discourse on finding this guiding idea, this guiding vision is very important to generate this broad support in society by political parties then for the safeguarding and the development of the Dissonant Heritage sites as it will need resources. So use open, moderate discussions, round tables, consultations, all the different tools which you have. So it's not just the ULG you work with, you can also have other activities to involve these different stakeholders. And important is here that you get together residents, initiatives who might work on your Dissonant Heritage, experts, researchers, get these really together at the table or on certain activities that they really can talk with each other. So give space to the many voices in a dialogue forum and bring the different ideas and opinions, what can happen with the site, what it stands for, bring it together. And conduct all these activities on site but also digitally. So it's always, I think it's nicer if you meet on site, but in particular in the younger generation, there are certain groups who might, they're not really coming to activities out front. So also think about what of digital activities can you do that people can discuss and what should be there, what are the memories and remembrance of these places. And very importantly, but also sometimes challenging, get the political support for the whole process. If you have the political support, it makes the process much more easier, because then also you have easier, more resources for the whole process. So try to identify at local, at regional or national level politicians who might share the idea that we should make use of our Dissonant Heritage site like that, and ambassadors, in which you then try to invite to be a little bit like a frontman to the public. When you have a meeting which maybe also drops by, draws certain attention to this, so try to figure out if you can find out some politicians and who can be helpful in, let's say, in the public awareness raising and about all the activities which you do. And last but not least, seek professional support. As I said, it's very difficult to organize meetings which have strong emotions and then to deal with this. And there are professionals outside who know how to handle, how to prepare, how to conduct such meetings. If you have the resources, it's well spent money because you get better results. So look out for these and you will find them. So, and another recommendation how to get more support is linking with other sectors. So, to receive additional support so more support you gain, and so more the importance of the Dissonant Heritage site increases. So it's important to link also the Dissonant Heritage to other topics and sectors. So not you are dealing with it, make other people wanting to deal with the Dissonant Heritage. And these can also then attract other target groups to the site, which you might not be able to reach. Because in each sector, you always work with a different target audience. And by this you can bring different target audiences to the Dissonant Heritage sites also to think and discuss about the future of this heritage site. So, and also involving other sectors can also open up for further cooperations with other partners which can support you in the development of the site. And what we found out very suitable sectors is the sector of education and outreach, of strengthening democracy, and it's also the tourism sector. Arts and culture can be very interesting and cooperation partners. So try to find out who in these sectors could be also interested in your Dissonant Heritage site. So what can you do about this? As an important function of these Dissonant Heritage sites can be to strengthen democracy, to remember occurrences of the past, to learn from the past to the future, so education can be an important part. And get in touch with these actors and institutions and make them from their perspective, from their task, what they have to do, deal with your Dissonant Heritage site. So this means you can invite, for example, schools, universities, museums, could be local ones, could be regional ones, sometimes even national ones, and invite them also associations of victims, so there are associations dealing with that. So invites them also to think about, okay, what can we do with this Dissonant Heritage site? And for this it's important the good thing of them, as they have target groups, they also are used to provide activities for different target groups. So offer target group oriented communication formats, for example, to invite families, which is also important. And there are like educational associations where we can develop like quiz and search games at the site, and through these quiz and search games we can get to know what is this place about, what has happened there, what is in the discussion here. And geocaching. We also had some examples where they did geocaching on these places, so people were drawn to these sites. So also this playful exploration of Dissonant Heritage can be part of the whole part. And also you can use publications, films, we have comics about Dissonant Heritage, and podcasts to remember about these sites, about what has happened there. So we have all these different tools which these other sectors normally use, and they can produce these things for your Dissonant Heritage site. And also when they're still eyewitnesses, personal stories. This is the most best thing you can have, personal stories. People who lived in that time, maybe who experienced this, and that they tell about what is happening. These personal stories are always working the best. So when these sectors develop maybe certain activities, also try to involve also then local people in this work. So try to connect these other sectors with local associations, with local people who also have an interest or know what has happened there from their personal experience, and that they together develop activities and materials about the site. So it's really important that this open exchange with these different voices from local practice to the academic support and the different sectors which is involved here. Also it was quite helpful to have an open archive, so you can collect objects of the past and present what has happened there, and you can invite private persons to bring in this archive their objects which are related to these sites, because often sometimes stuff that was there was taken to private homes, or they have things which remember what has happened there. Put this into this archive. This makes also a very, very different experience when people can experience these personal objects and not just, let's say, the larger research one. Also this personal touch also makes it easier to look at the dissonance. When I look at the personal story, I can better feel and understand if it's just like the general story. So personal stories are very important. And when you work with schools, you have to prepare the didactic material. Schools do not have time, teachers have to do so much, they don't take the time to produce these materials. So part of it that you or the other institution, that you prepare some materials which schools can use. And also here it's very helpful to have time to give them also some background information before they maybe come to the place. So to have like a contact person, and for which schools can contact to discuss what can we do here, what kind of materials do we have. This is also important to have such kind of person. And also you, together with these different sectors, you can also try to develop a program of activities. And these can be very different ones. It can be readings, it can be lectures, master classes, it can be commemorative events, it can be walks with the people, with politicians, it can be open days, discussion forums. So all these different kind of activities. So more diverse, so better, because each format often attracts a different kind of audience. And we try to attract a different kind of audience. Art and culture. There was a very interesting site in Belgium, which I think for me they were like the anarchists, how they use art and culture and to attract people to the site, to experience the site from a very different perspective. So art and culture allows to engage with the site and the distance in a very different way than, for example, if you just look at facts. So in this way also it attracts very different people to come to the place. And what's here important, what you should do, contact cultural institutions in your city, contact local artists, national but also international artists, and make them aware of that place that you would like to develop. What is the perspective on this, the different perspectives, and invite them to think from their art's perspective and how would I present as an artist person all these topics in an art piece or an art project. And most important, sometimes also they can do very interactive stuff. And this can be very interesting. Of course, what you have to take care, sometimes, in particular when it's places where atrocities have happened, there are ethical boundaries, what you can do with arts and culture. And you have also to present this, like where are certain, let's say, limits to the artist, because sometimes they can get quite extreme in what they're doing, and they also have to be a little bit careful. So also discussion with them beforehand, and they get a better understanding is really important. And in this way also provide premises for art and culture, that they can prepare their art pieces, that they can present art pieces, so you need these premises. This is also an important part. And then implement these art and cultural projects. Exhibitions, can be performances, and can be workshops, can be open air cinema, maybe there are films about this site and about the Dissonant Heritage topics. You can have a literature festival, and these can all take place at the site, but they also can take place somewhere else in the city, because sometimes these places are also quite outside, hard to reach. So also invite to have activities within the city, and by this also you can draw the attention to the Dissonant Heritage site if it's maybe more further away. And what can also be helpful, and when you work with art and culture, there are lots of cultural funds, arts funds, so you can from this gain other resources to the development of your heritage site. It's the same also with education. You have educational funds which you might draw them and use for the development of your heritage site. Last but not least, tourism. The Dissonant Heritage can be an important impetus as a location factor, but also as a cultural tourism destination. And also tourism reaches another kind of groups who come then to your place. Also with this, you get another target group to your Dissonant Heritage site. And also tourism can help you to increase tourist numbers to come up. And they also may pay an entrance fee or so on. By this, you can also raise some income. We had some Dissonant Heritage sites which has so high tourist numbers that the main income has come through the visitors, not anymore through public funding. Really, this is not possible with all the places, but by this also you can create a certain income if it has some importance in this site. So try to integrate your Dissonant Heritage in the tourist circuit. So it can be hiking trails, for example, passing by at that site, or you can have like day packages where the visit of the Dissonant Heritage site is combined with other interesting tourist destinations in your city or in the region. So you should contact your local regional tourism managers to see, okay, how can we integrate this in the tourism circuit. Also what we find out, often there are local tourist guides missing who can really present what was happening, which know about the different perspectives and all this. So it's important that you train your local tourist guides so that they really can ensure like an authentic and fact-based communication what has happened there. And in many parts you also realize you can have, let's say, 5 tourist guides, but they only can do it at the weekends, for example, or only on Mondays, because they also have a normal job and they're not just tourist guides. So in this way it's also important that you create alternatives to guided tours, so that also individually you can go through the site and realize what has happened there, what is here in discussion. So have audio guides, it's a very important part, or use social apps or media, so you have QR code, you can scan it, and then at your cellular, then you can see what has happened there, you can get further information. So also think about how as an individual you can go through the site and get to know what has happened there, because not always you can see anymore, as also the structures might have eroded, has been destroyed and demolished. Also marketing, of course, then in the long run is important. So here you can try to invite travel journalists, bloggers, or multipliers. For example, there are often tour and people who offer study trips in the cultural tourism sector. So invite these people to come to the site, present it to them, show it by them, and maybe if they say, oh, where are you interested, then they will write about or organize them like study trips and to these sites. And here also it's very important, as with the trainers, tell them, communicate what is the site about, what is the particular theme of this site. And also here, respect the limits of dissonance, in particular when it's places where atrocities have taken place, for example, in concentration camp, and ensure, in the case, ensure that the tourism activities are appropriate to what has happened there in the past. So avoid Disneyland, in particular when, for example, Disneyland, when you have a concentration camp that you make like, some have maybe, oh, we can make it like a very special tour, but also there you have to see what are the ethical boundaries, what you can do with tourism or not. If it's more symbolic meaning, you have much more freedom, but in particular in place of atrocities, they should also be very careful how tourism works there. So, what I would like to stress in my last slide is don't use your heritage site just to look back. It's always you look back to learn for today and for the future. Always try to find the links to today and to the future, because this gives us a function for today, and then it's much more interesting also to deal with your heritage site. It can have very different functions, housing, whatsoever, but always part of the Dissonant Heritage site should be as the place of education, of remembrance, and what has happened there, and a place of public debate. And of course, then you can add further functions for which this might be suitable. And try with all the process which you will start to promote a political and social climate that enables an engagement with the Dissonant Heritage and open dialogue. So don't say, oh, we're not allowed to talk about this or that. No, make an open dialogue, and by this then, through open the facts, which you can find out, limit and then discussion. So very important, raise awareness about your site, why it's important, what is the added value or can be the added value for your city, for your region. Develop this shared perspective to get a broader support by the different stakeholders. Build up diverse partnerships, because you will never make it alone. You always need partners, so build up these partnerships and attract other sectors also to deal with your sites, but this gets a broader importance, and then it will make it easier, but it all takes time and take your time.
Good presentation, and now it's the time to Doriana. The other side.
Theme, especially in Albania, we talk not as we wanted to. But let's start. So the presentation is arranged as a narrative presentation, and by using some case studies to develop further the discussion and the argument. Despite its importance to the growth of our cities and territories, as we transition from totalitarianism to democracy, we somehow ignore this heritage, and very few discussions are made on it. There has been the Berlin Wall fell, which ended the communist governments in Eastern Europe and brought Europe together. This was also a turning point for Albania. After more than 50 years of Stalinist rule by Emperor Hoxha, the country had a hard time making change from an authoritarian system to democracy. It still is. For this change to happen, we need to be reflective about what happened and further to answer the main question, what does it mean? We believe that it's precisely Dissonant Architecture that has the power to reveal the past while contributing as a bridge to link generations of the present and the future. So before diving into the different aspects of Dissonant Architecture in Albania, it's crucial to understand the historical context in which this architecture emerged. Albania's urban and architectural landscape was heavily influenced by communism, characterized by isolation, government control, and strict political ideology under Enver Hoxha's regime. Communist Albania's architectural heritage under Hoxha can be divided into 4 distinct periods, each reflecting significant developments of the country during the dictatorship. The first months after winning the war were characterized by communist revenge to control every aspect of life. It was March 1st, 1945, when the citizens of Tirana would see Albania's first communist political trial in the cinema theater turned into the courthouse. Over 1,300 people witnessed a tragedy that ended 44 days later with the shoot or execution of 17 intellectuals, part of the opposition party at the time. Albania emerged victorious in the war due to its alliance with Eastern European countries. After 1944, the country expanded its communication networks, economy, cultural and political ideology by strengthening ties with the Soviet Union and distancing itself from the western part of Europe. Sculptures, obelisks, slogans being built all over the country celebrating the victory of the Second World War through all Albania. 28,000 troops were declared to be martyrs for the liberation of the country. Additionally, individual designations, sculptures, and memorials across the region commemorated the wartime victories, reinforcing the regime narrative and legacy. Most of this cultural legacy today is lost and destroyed, while some of them can be found inside the museums. Artifact preservations, commemoration, and monumentalization of this period remain controversial. During the communist regime, a new social order emerged, bringing new institutions, different practices, and continuous war with the old, which included the Ottoman legacy, the period of the kingdom, and the years of fascism. Private property was seized and replaced with state-owned property under the new economic system. Private ventures like marketplaces, as this one in the photo here, were displaced and destroyed, and people were forcibly evicted from their houses. In its fight against religious beliefs, Hoxha's communist state destroyed many religious artifacts, including frescoes, icons, and architectural buildings. The second phase of Dissonant Architecture emerged after the 50s, during the Soviet Brotherhood. One of the earliest projects was the demolition of the old bazaar, so this one here, to make room for the new cultural building, built in 1959 as a gift of Nikita Khrushchev of the time. That is the Palace of Culture. You can see it in the center. The local population of Tirana still today consider this building cursed, as it symbolized violence, destruction, and the confiscation of private property. Cultural landmarks significantly influence new cultural practices, architecture and buildings in both large cities and small communities, as this in Permet across the nation. To facilitate propaganda and cultural indoctrination, the state established theaters, cinemas, screens in every Albanian town and even in the villages. After the cultural washing, Albania went through its hardest time since Second World War, the war against religion, in which God transformed into the enemy. The goal of this effort against religion was to get people to be loyal to the party state instead of their God. Hundreds of mosques and churches were set on fire and religious leaders were in prison. After the end of this Second War and the end of the good relations with the Soviet Union, the party developed a new plan, now the 60s, the one that would industrialize the nation, now with the help of the Chinese. The government, during the late 60s and the early 70s, turned thousands of hectares of land into the industrial infrastructure and built it across all the country. This included building roads, trains, industrial combines, and renovating agricultural landscapes. The propaganda sought to organize the entire population through mandatory volunteering to build a new Albania as a lantern to love the Adriatic coast. The hardest work was delivered to political prisoners. The regime made the entire population self-reliant and considered anyone who opposes the party an enemy. Following news of the dictator death, in 85, the nation transitioned into the final stage of the dictatorship marked by its destruction. Despite the country's severe circumstances with widespread hunger and scarcity, the post-Hoxha regime constructed several excellent architectural landmarks to glorify the regime, utilizing the boulevard of Tirana as a political tool. Several buildings were constructed during that time, including Hotel Tirana, the Tirana National Museum, the Palace of Congresses, and of course the Parliament and the Hotel. The term traumatized is thus also applicable. I brought here just a phrase of Inger Eiger as to describe in some words what this period meant to people, but better of this photo can describe it all. So the early 90s found the country facing several social, political, and economic up and downs. The economy shifted from centralized to free market law, followed by a free movement and migration in the territory. People were facing, beside primary needs, also adequate housing and migration issues. All of Albania's buildings from the communist regime show a different stage of the countries during his rule. In post-communist Albania, keeping historical buildings in good shape and using them for new things brings up questions about memory, national identity, and wrongdoings done in the past. Albert Rossi, the famous Italian architect and thinker, thought that towns store memories for everyone. Every building and every form has a story and historical meaning that connects people from the past, the present, and the future. Rossi stresses how important it is to protect architectural history, not only for its aesthetic value, but also for keeping cultural continuity and identity alive in cities that are changing all the time. From the Albanian case, we can reveal 4 dimensions of dissonant architecture. When looking at dissonant architecture from the point of view of the people who lived in and interacted with these kinds of environments, its significance includes the emotional, social, and ideological effects that it has on people's daily lives, sense of self, and awareness as a whole. When you look at the history of commodification in dissonant architecture, it's possible to understand how these architectural designs were used to shape and reflect the identities, experiences, and knowledges of the people who lived in the regimes. its monumentalization, the act of making big, unpleasant structures in Albania, stands as a powerful example of how architecture can reflect and support other ideas. These buildings are now detailed records of the country's past, have shaped its culture and shared memories for a long time. The Dissonant Communist architecture shows how ideology, cultural manipulation, and social manipulation all together work in complex ways, bringing out both the artistic and political elements. There are two case studies that can better describe and can reveal in practical what I already speak up in theoretical. So, how to reveal the position the local community had towards this type of architectural techniques. There are two case studies, the National Theatre of Tirana and the Pyramid of Tirana. Both buildings are condemned to being built during a certain political period, while carrying the burden of being called the theatre a fascist building, the pyramid a communist building. The case studies of Albania architectural, Dissonant architecture, particularly the Pyramid of Tirana and the National Theatre, reflect the nation's complex journey in reconciling its past with its future. I brought here a timeline of the two buildings. Even though they are built in different periods, like the theatre in 38, the pyramid in 88, so 50 years apart, somehow after the 90s, beginning at the end of the 90s, after the war, the Civil War, began their journey how to transform and what to do with these two buildings. So, is it right to keep a building that symbolizes a difficult past, or should we replace it? The timeline serves as a comprehensive record of all the debates that have taken in Albania surrounding controversial architecture. Indeed, the dissonance in architectural styles is what precisely ties this building despite their distinct characteristics. The Pyramid of Tirana, originally built as a museum of Amberhoja, later repurposed multiple times after the fall of communism. Early 90s, the pyramid's importance changed significantly. It became a convention center. Later, a national jazz festival was held in here, a lecture hall, a theater, exhibition halls, and potential location for the Albanian Parliament and the Cultural Center from 1992. It entered into several competition races. You can see here from 2000, 2007, 10, 14, 15, up to 19. 5 different projects were proposed for this building. And, but what they have in common, no Republic were involved during these proposals and these discussions. So all the decisions were made top-down, and even the last one that we're standing on. The government changed, we have several governments here, while the power over the building faith never shifted from central authorities. In 2010, after
the pyramid was abandoned.
Sorry?
The pyramid was abandoned for a period. How long?
Yes, it was so. After 2010, when the debate to demolish began in 2010. So the two, I will follow up later, but from 2010 it was abandoned up to 2015 and later this last period. But it was from 1992, later 1994 up to 2010, it was partially. But this area, because the underneath area and the backyard, it was all functional until 2020. So some part of the pyramids were already being, as it was a national television, part of this building, but only the central area was abandoned. In 2010, after a failed tentative to refunction the space into the theater, the debate intensified over the preservation or demolition of the pyramid. Advocates for demolition argued that it would be symbolically erase Albania's totalitarian past. by replacing it with a parliament building that represented people's power over authoritarian regimes. Meanwhile, the preservationists argued for its historical value in understanding Albania's history and transition to democracy. 9 years later, the fifth pyramid project, the one the Minimas design, was presented to be implemented. The people were excluded from the planning process, but the project was delivered successfully. To some scholars, in a country that has never faced its past, whose meaning remained distorted, this project is a nail in the coffin of democracy. So this project aimed to open the pyramid for everyone to walk through it. The idea was to ensure that everyone has access to this, and so everybody can be on top of the pyramid. So even though the two projects were implemented by two different governments, they opposed each other all the time, but at the end, the two projects had in common that they both used the building somehow to put it over or on top, the opposite of the dictatorship, so the power of the people. They use as a symbolic of the building. Meanwhile, the theater was built during the Albanian monarchy, as I said, and located in the opposite to the Skanderbeg Plaza, behind the Ministry's complex. The cultural center was designed by Italians, and after World War II was the one where the Soviet Emerald trial was held in 1945. The treason trial developed state terror through communist regime. During this period, so the National Theatre, now it's a symbol of resistance against phased demolition, even though protest was going during demolition. So when the government wanted to demolish the building first in 1998, then in 2002, afterwards in 2018, a protest grassrooted in the courtyard of the theater, which was finished in 2020 when the police forces entered the building at 4:30 in the morning and began the demolition while the citizens were inside opposing this decision that was outrageous. And since then, somehow it was brought back to life according to the narratives of the government. The perverse totalitarian power of the dictatorship by using exactly hundreds of police forces. The preservation efforts also underscore Under Rossi ideas of architectural history as a means to safeguard collective memory and identity within urban spaces. The National Theatre and the Pyramid combine Hoxha's story and as historical landmarks, characterizing the dictatorship beginning and conclusion. Therefore, these locations offer restorative commemoration opportunities for Albanians to convey the wide variety of their experiences under the dictatorship, especially persecuted. Both architectural buildings under study revealed evidence of the need to close the painful chapter, rather than open the wounds and heal them. Each initiative towards this building started aiming to transform but not accept, to change but not embrace, to deny the past by building the new future. But isn't this exactly what the dictatorship did? Albania has struggled to preserve its dissonant architecture. Preservation, repurposing, or demolition debates about landmarks like Pyramid of Tirana and the National Theatre revealed social differences and historical memory interpretation. Albania's complex history and politics make preserving and discussing its dissonant architecture very difficult. These obstacles include disagreements on history, urban planning, and cultural identity. Post-communist Albania's narrative and identity depend on these thoughts. Dissonant architecture preservation requires public participation and cultural memory. We agree on this. So historians, architects, cultural activists, and locals must participate in inclusive decision-making. Exhibition, public consultation, and education can illuminate Albania's socialist past and inspire important conversations. Whose voices define Albania's architectural history is debated. Giving communities decision-making power, health preservation programs match society values and future aims. I brought here an example, a project that was part of EU for Culture program that aimed exactly to include society and people into providing an innovative approach towards this dissonant architecture. And here is the prison of Musaj, one of the dictatorship prisons that is in the north of the country, where the political members of the opposition and everybody who opposed the regime, so the intellectuals, the writers, the dissident, and everybody that had different thoughts, we call it that as political prisoners, were held in here, and it was one of the harshest places where the dictatorship used to oppress the people. Without the mechanism to facilitate the democratization of decision-making, the cases of Tirana demonstrate that during times of significant political and economic stress, the regimes exploited and altered the cultural heritage, disregarding its significance for the metropolitan community. The legacy community might employ the development of a conceptual tool, such as the urban cultural cluster, as an urban cultural layer that combines the physical and human aspects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your presentation was really emotional, and also thank you for preparing such a great story of architecture and also the history of Albania, because for many of us it's the first time here in the country, here in Tirana, so really appreciate it. And now it's time to go to Leipzig.
Yes.
So I wish to invite Stephan Seiler to present an innovative study to involve local population in the competition of architecture. So we are inside the renovation building, the Dissonant Heritage but renovated, and as Doriana said, without the participatory approach in Leipzig, they try to organize a different type of this competition.
Okay, so hello everyone. I will take a ride of my last 3 years of a project dealing with Dissonant Heritage in the city of Leipzig, and how to involve the public and how to get to a point where we have a view for the future. And to make aware why is this type of dissonant, or is it dissonant, which way of dissonance, give you a short overview about the history, to make you aware where is the site, we are in the middle of the city of Leipzig. And this home site is our project from the last 2 or 3 years, and for the next maybe 10 or 15 years. And we are in the city center. There are these streets mark the historical city wall, so you can't be more inside the city center. You can get a presentation afterwards. So, this site is somehow one of the birthplaces of the city of Leipzig. It's first mentioned in 1015 as the URBACT, a historical castle. And in 1150 there was a settlement of the Franciscan monastery. So we have this development until the early 90s. And here you see the sketch from the URBACT, the development in 1637. So you see it becomes a denser city, and the site becomes more and more built and structured. And in 1847 we see here there's some housing, some craftsmanship, and you see a huge church. It's the Church of the Matei church, so the whole site we named it Matei Kirchhof. And in the early 20s you see there's no room left to build any more housing or any more buildings, because it's completely structured in a dense city center way of this time. And then you have some historical views. It looks like Leipzig and other places looks today. And then there was the Second World War, and with the bombings, the whole city center was destroyed. And the only thing left was the so-called Round Ecke, and this is where the American liberators took place. After the Soviet military administration took over the place, and after that, yes. And when they go back, or when they leave the place, the Stasi, the intelligence service of the GDR, took over the place, and they needed some more room. In the 80s, they expanded with the city complex of the 80s. We deal with this complex from the 80s. We deal now. And yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that it's also historic, and has this historical value, because in this picture here you see where the military of the Stasi stand against the protesters, the peaceful protesters of 1989. It's this exact place here. So you can see it has some layers of dissonance. I put here an overview from the bombings of the Second World War. You see it's completely demolished. The only thing, however, survived is this part here. This is the Runde Ecke, where the Stasi and the military administration of the Soviet took place. But the church was gone, the housing was gone, all was demolished. And in the late 80s, 85, the intelligence service of the GDR, Stasi, needed more place and built this complex, this house building complex. And for the people of Leipzig, it was forbidden to take photos and pictures of it, because the Stasi was spying on the people. The Stasi didn't want the people spying on Stasi. So here's a picture of the peaceful revolution on our side of Leipzig, but I think it gives you perspective of how many people was involved in this peaceful revolution. And this is where we
And here's an overview of the whole site we deal with. In front we have the Lunde, which is now a document archive and memorial run by how it's called, Fine
Association.
As an association to remember the totalitarian regime of the Stasi. We have the Citizens Committee. They have the approach to tell the story how they deal with the fight of the Stasi. We have a museum of schools to teach children and also grown-ups about different layers of history in school, how was school in the 20s, how was school in the 60s and 80s. And this side of the 80s building is mainly used for some offices of our municipality, some leftover offices and some storage. And this complete site is unused since the 90s. And we have a little network of workshops as a social institution where you can go and get your bike fixed or something like that. And in front here is parking lot. So, to give you a better understanding how this site feels, you see, you have a vibrant city which is mostly rebuilt and growing, and this whole area is in ownership of the city, and some parts in ownership of the federal government, mostly over here. And for me, I was grown up in Leipzig, and this whole area is, in my remember, always the backside of the city, an unused backside, abandoned. There was a club in there, a good one, and it's not a place where you want to go. It's not a place where the people want to take time or have an evening or an afternoon. And this site has some parts where you can say, yeah, there is a value. There is a value from the artist who made these decorations, staircases. You have these floor halls where you can say, okay, it's a generic floor hall, what's the fuss about? And every now and then in the elevator, sometimes you find some social art. So in the 90s, in the late 90s, there was a club in there, an ordinary disco with heavy drinking and all this. So this is this side of the building. This is the site where the Stasi took place since 1985. This site over here was for the police of the GDR in Leipzig. And this site is completely abandoned since the 90s. So this is the structural, this is how it looks today. I think we took these photos maybe 1.5 years ago. It's rotten from the top floor to the ground floor, because the roof is leaking since 95. And of course the city of Leipzig was always, yeah, we tear this down someday. They never took some money in their hands to renovate the roof. But it has also some interesting parts from the past. This is a raw post anlage. You could send some messages through the pipes in the whole building. Quite interesting. So I think you got a good overview why this site is somehow dissonant. It's the birthplace of the city. We had a Franciscan monastery. We had the destruction to the Second World War, the Soviet military administration, the intelligence service of the GDR, the protesters of the peaceful revolution in the 90s. And I think I only mentioned this in the last 2 years in the participation process. many of the citizens of Leipzig remember it as the place where they had to go in the 90s, where so many people in Leipzig were unemployed, because it was the agency of labor in the same building. And yeah, as I said, some parts became a club. So in 2017, the city of Leipzig, the council of the city of Leipzig decided to develop this area with a future-oriented approach, because, as I said, it's mostly owned by the city. We had no clear picture what to do with it, but the federal government of the Stasi fired came to us and said, we want to build here in this area the main Stasi archive for Saxony. And we said, okay, this is a good reason to stop the competition, to start the development process, but how we do this? Who we talk to, who we need to get on board. And we had a sort of action plan, an early one from the city council, which said, yeah, we need a mixed-use urban quarter. It should be easy accessible. It should be linked with the city center and the public. There should be public and public accessible uses. This is not it's not a solution from a participation process. This was from the city council itself. They said we should do this. And we said, okay, we tried to raise funding from a project. It's called the National Project for Sustainable. And we proposed to them, okay, we will do an urban planning competition with a huge part of participation. And they said, okay, you can do this. And they gave us the money. And we got the money, and after that we said, okay, how can we do this? We have existing stakeholders on the site with different opinions, different approaches. Some of them said, yeah, we have to remember the totalitarian regime as it was. Others said, no, we can give new uses to the building. Others said, tear it all down, we want the historical city back. Others said, yeah, tear it all down, let's make a park of the site. And we had to decide which competition process would fit this complicated task. It's not an easy one. It's not build a house and be done. So we have to find this point out. We have to find out which participation process could be the right one, and which parts of the 80 buildings has maybe a historic value. Have they some? Have they not? And overall, in which structural condition is the unused part of the building. And is any of the historical layers more important than another one? We have to discuss this. And from the beginning, for us it was clear we can't do this on our own, as I said. We needed a communication and participation agency for the whole process. We needed a management office only for the competition, for the planning competition, also for the whole process. We had a media agency. You see, we have a corporate design. So maybe forgive me that I don't use the corporate design from Archethics. We have to involve all existing stakeholders, every relevant department of the municipality. They have to work together to get this done. And we needed more expert or specific topics like engineers that could tell us how's the structure of the building, what can we reuse, rebuild, what is the historic value or something like that. And we had some artists around for audio walk to raise awareness of the place. Of course, the first thing we needed to do is bring this site back to the public communication, because they don't go there, and only the stakeholders on the site was there. So we have to invite the papacy to rediscover this site. And so the first phase was to prepare for the competition. We can't start the competition, we have to prepare for it. And we needed a coordinated task. What should be done in the competition, what should not be done. And we wanted this coordinated task for the competition after a complex participation process, so that everyone involved can say, okay, it's not 100% what I wanted, but maybe 80 or 70%. So everyone finds their own point of view a bit more or less in this competition. We needed an answer how to deal with the 80s building complex, because, as I said, some of them want to tear it down, some of them want to preserve it, some of them only want to reuse it. The younger generation said, don't tear it down, there's so much free energy in it, you can't tear it down. We needed an answer to that. We wanted to make the competition in itself as transparent as possible. And this is a complicated thing in Germany because we have rules for competitions. Mostly these rules say it has to be all anonymous to make sure that every office has the same chance to win the competition. And we wanted that the planning teams who propose their designs get in touch with the papacy in the communication phase and have to discuss with the public and their opinions about the designs. And we wanted to make sure that out of our participation process, we had a group of 60 people who we asked, two of them to take place in the jury of the urban planning competition to make sure we have not only architects, urban planner, and people from the municipality, but also the public in the jury itself. So, phase one, get a coordinated task. Difficult enough. In April 2021, during COVID, we had a public panel where our mayor invited all the people to took place in the future steps of participation. We had a panel with around 150 people sitting there and listening, and we had a great response to that. We also broadcasted this on the internet, so you could watch it later or watch it live. And shortly after that, we took a short online survey to get a feeling for the themes, for the topics we will face in the next years. And our agency for the participation process said the best thing we can do is form a fixed group and go to the difficult tasks with them in 4 or 5 different workshops. And this is what we did afterwards. We had 60 people that we somehow, they were in the lottery, and we got in touch with them through lottery for 30 people, and the other 30 were the stakeholders, the storytellers, and all these things. We brought them together in a fixed panel to discuss certain topics, like one day was only about how should we deal with the 80s buildings. One day was about which uses should be on the site in the future. One day was about which historic value has this or the other part. And after that, we had some, we call it action days, where we stood on the marketplace and invited people to go with us through the area. We had an interactive screen where people could mark things they care about, or where they could mark their ideas, which is important, where should be a new entrance, something like that. And after that, we had another public panel where our agency and our mayor presented the conclusion from this phase of participation. And yeah, during COVID, we have online service here on the and the product of the first phase was the so-called mathematische code. We could get all this information from the people down to 10 points that are their main interest. The mathematische should be about active history education. It should be a common good place. It should be should have the public spaces and a meeting area for people. There's also the word agora often used for this part. It should be about participation in co-ownership with the public. It should be about diversity and openness. It should have only public users. It should be barrier-free and car-free, always. It should be a sustainable district. There should also be some parts of urban living, because the city of Leipzig, in the inner city, there's always a part of housing and living. And when there are businesses allowed, it should only be small and local businesses. This is the product of 1.5 years of participation. And with this, we go to our competition agency and said, this is our roadbook. We have now to make a competition and a proposal for the design teams which can do or which can use this to give us ideas how it should look in the future. So we launched the competition. The competition is split into two parts. I didn't translate this because I think the most important thing is over here. At this point, we have an open competition, so every architectural or urban planning team who has time and find this interesting could take place in the competition. And we got 66 designs from different offices. And at this point, we had the first jury, which said, okay, we have to get rid of the okayish designs and make and go with 9 designs in the second phase. This part was without public participation calls. There was no allowance from our from the rules for competitions to get in this part a participation process. But we managed, and this is something special in Germany. We managed to get between the first and the second phase of the competition. We could do another participation there, and with 9 designs which won in the first phase, we generate a market where all the 9 offices where all the 9 offices had to go to the market and have a little market stand, and where they had a whole day to discuss their designs with the public. And after that, they go to the second phase of the competition process, and they have to get the information involved in their designs. So these are the 9 designs we got into the second phase. Most of them have a more conservative approach to the 80s buildings. Some of them tear it all down and make something new. Here's integrated in something new. Here is teared down completely. Here is mostly teared down. This is the original one, but transformed into something else. Some of them said, no, let's preserve it at all and make a green hill as the Stasi archive in the middle of the building. And you see, you get of them has their own value and has their own approach to it, where you can say, okay, this is not my idea, not my favorite idea, but it has something interesting. And what we did is, before the marketplace, we had another online survey where all the people who are interested could manage to cycle through the designs in a website. We had every design as a 3D model on the website where you can cycle around and took it from this angle or this, and you could comment, you could wrote your commentary to each design. And this was a great idea, but it was terribly executed by us. Yeah. Because you needed no registration to take part of this, and when you have no registration, you have no information that you can take with you, because one person could write the same thing with other words 500 times, so what's the value of that? Yeah, there's no like this. So for you, when you make an online survey or online participation, always with registration and moderation, otherwise it's unusable. And this was, for me, in the participation process, I think the best part, which I was always excited about. You can see here the architects, and this is unusual for me, for us. They go in direct communication with the public during the competition. And here are things like, oh, I don't like this, but this is probably good. We were afraid at first, will this work? Can this work? We don't know. But afterwards, everyone agreed it was a great chance for everyone, for the public, for the architects, for us as municipality, and for the whole process at all. And I can't stress enough how good this was, because in the end, everyone got to the panel, and the jury who decided which 9 designs go into the second phase explained their decision. It's unusual, but it's so good because then the normal people who don't get involved much with this decision making can hear, it's not only about the preservation of the building cost, it's also about make this site accessible for the public, make this site car-free, make this site more sustainable, all these things. And so they get a feeling for the different points of view in the decision finding. This is also important. And we got the first place. It's a relative young architect bureau from Stuttgart with Nils Scheffler, landscape architect from Berlin. And they took the approach, okay, we tear most of the 80s buildings down, but we preserve this part, which was part of the Stasi, to open up the whole site to the city and make it accessible from both sides. And the main part is the so-called Forum for Freiheit und Bürgerrechte. It's called Forum for Freedom and Civil Rights. In this cube, there should be the Stasi archive from the federal government, and some house of the stakeholders is already on the site. And part of the 80s, in their idea, should become a greater good place where the people of Leipzig can create a co-ownership to get this place back to their own. So this side over here, public housing, we are not sure about this. Could be that. We have to decide this in the next steps in other competitions. And I think this is also important. We have to communicate all the time. It's an urban planning idea. It's not about the final house. So this talk could be look completely different when we make a competition about architecture about this building. And we also make a competition, or will make a competition about how to transform and reuse these 80s buildings. Yeah, it's another overview. But I think you can see that now the whole site is more open. It's you have room to meet, you have public places, and I think you can imagine it could be a better place than it is now. But what have you learned? Because many people with strong opinions will look every step that you have quite detailed, and you have to be as transparent as possible about every decision you make in the participation process, or in the process at all. And document every step that you achieve, and milestones you should decide in the city council, so you get a better, you have you can fix these decisions for the future. And yeah, an online participation without registration into any usable results, of course. I have to read this. Yeah, this format as a marketplace is absolute brilliant. You should, if you can do anything like that, you should do this. And you need experts during the whole process on your side. You can't do this on your own. It's, for my opinion, not possible. And you need at least some guidelines for the participation. You can't go into the participation process when it's completely open. You need some, okay, we can't discuss about this and we can't discuss about that, but between this we can decide things together. And you will always have some strong opinion leaders who interference your whole process, and they go to the media and they say you're intransparent, and they say you're not good enough as a municipality for this process. So prepare for that, and after all, if you are involved, be involved and have fun in the whole process, because otherwise the people will sense this and they don't have fun at all. And I think this leads us to the main questions of the participation process we learned. You should know about what can you let the public decide and what not. So you should not be in a position to say, yeah, we have discussed this, but after all, we can't do this. This is not good, because this costs you trust in the public. So, you have to know when it makes sense to involve the public. You can't, for some complex topics like, is there a historic value, you can involve the public, but after all, there are some experts who need to be spoken to. You need, for every step, there is a right format for the participation. Sometimes it's meeting together in a marketplace. Sometimes it's meeting online. Sometimes it's give a newsletter and wait for a response. I don't know. You need to know who you need for the participation process. Do you need the public? Do you need experts? Do you need the stakeholders? Do you need the department? And you need also know who do I speak to. When I speak to the public, to a young person who is a school kid, I need another vocabulary than when I speak to an architect. So who do I speak to? And yeah, for us, what's next? We want to activate the site as fast as possible with some low-budget projects, temporary uses. We want to use the local group to co-develop a strategy for users and users in the part of the 80s building should be transformed. In the long run, we want to transform the local group to a prominent stakeholder of the third place, so-called common good place or greater good place. We are getting in touch now with some foreign funding programs in the federal government to get the first steps financed. And yeah, we want to make sure that the first place from the competition process will be fixed to some city council decisions. We can work on this in the next 10 or 15 years. So that's for me. I hope I could give you an insight in my last 3 years in Leipzig. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephan. And I think it was amazing to see that it's possible to organize an architectural competition through a participatory process. I think we are really, really on time, but we still have a few minutes if we have some questions for our speakers. So if you want to ask something to Stephan, to Doriana, or to Nils about their presentation, you can do that.
I have a question or thing about to Nils, because you pointed for things that are important in this process, but I think also it's important to find out about the stereotype of places, and you have to deal with this as well. Stereotype, and there is also something like auto-stereotype. What people, inhabitants, think that other people from other cities, countries, think about the place they live. And I think the dealing with the stereotypes is also important thing with this whole participation project.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think also what this can serve for, this networks that you can try to figure out what do other cities, countries know about or think about my place. Right? That's what you say, the stereotype, which could be pretty close to truth, but also could be completely out of the context. And by this you can say, okay, this is what we might also have to deal with, how we present it, so to, at least not reliable stereotypes do not stay. Because this is finally what I think it's about, to really show what are these sites about, and the unreliable perspective that they get pushed out more and more, because there are facts presented, what is happening there. What I maybe did not stress so much, but it's also quite interesting, always to present the perspective, or not, to present what has happened in the context of that time. So it's always too easy to say, today, oh, this was bad, this happened. But maybe when you lived that time, the whole context was different, so it didn't look bad. Maybe it was, but still it didn't look like. So also always to explain the topics in the context of that history. And sometimes we realize, oops, we are in the same situation today again. We do something what we don't feel bad about, but it's pretty similar to what they did in the past as well. That can make us rethink, are we doing well today or not? That's what I mean with learning from the past to the present. We send stereotypes. So they could be right in the context of that time, but maybe of today. We never know how we will interpret it in the future. This will change again. So it's also not that we finish a discussion. It can be in 10, 20 years we have new ideas or new facts on what has happened, and it can also turn how we think about these places. So it's a constant, constant work on these sites. That's also quite interesting.
Thank you. Other questions or curiosity, comments for our speakers?
I have a question for Doriana, because for me it's very interesting, the case study of the pyramid, in the sense that in both the project, the tentative is trying to deal with the past, destroying the architecture, or give the accessibility to the architecture to whole. So my question is about during this regeneration process, if in some way the architect engage people, asking the community on how
Do you want the architecture design?
Yeah.
Well, in 2019, the project was delivered via national television as a final project, already being discussed in closed doors, so nobody was involved. I mean, nobody, no experts, no locals, no architects, no academics, beside the government people and the architects. So it was delivered as a process, as something not to be discussed. And even though there were tentatives to discuss and what and how and maybe we can change, it was like, this is the best project we're going to get, so there's nothing to discuss about it somehow. This was a bundle of discussion. The same even for even the National Theatre that has Gary Ingalls proposal, exactly the same. The difference is that they demolished the other building. This was not demolished but transformed.
Yeah.
They have similarities in the same.
Any comments? Yeah.
No, I have a question to Stephan, but also in this project, always the term of economic sustainability of these sites is very difficult, but you need to think about, because finally to run the place, you need financing. So, did you have this also already in this process? We're thinking about what would be like the business model, how to ensure economic sustainability? Was it also part of it?
Of course we had. It's interesting that for a lot of the new users, the people were relative, had common ideas that it should be all public users, it should be all for the greater good and all these things. And we said, yeah, it's all right, but how we finance this? Okay. And we said, we have some parts that are from the government, they finance their own, and we have to finance part mainly of the 80s building, which will be transformed. And of course, we need some parts in this building because it's huge enough, which get to rent by little startups or little companies who are found in Leipzig that make it possible to get to a plus minus zero finance situation of this. We have not decided the final financial model because we need another expert to discuss with them what could work with the program we have in mind. And we will start this in the end of the year to discuss this with them in the next half year, in 2024, I guess. But we have not fixed model yet. So it's a difficult one because on the one hand you want mainly public users, on the other hand you need to finance them. So there has to be some private sector involved.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that the time is finished. And yes, I want to thank you again our guest for being here today in the second masterclass of Archethics dealing with architecture and people. Doriana Musaj from Polis. Nils Scheffler. Stephan Seiler. So we can finish our live streaming, but for the partners, now we have a break, coffee break, and we will go back inside this blue cube at 11:30, right?
But we have a coffee break.
The coffee break is outside. Thank you so much and see you in a while.